Hello, this is Jamie Magrich. Welcome to Jamie's Craft Table. Today I want to do a simple to avid card. It's one card 3 ways, and let's get started. Okay, the stamp sets that I'm going to be using is Dandelion Wishes. I'm going to be using this stamp set and sending well wishes your way. For the background, I'm going to be using polka dots, and I'm going to be using this one here. I'm also, for the avid one, I'm going to be using the Swirls and Curls embossing folder. And for the middle of the ground and the avid one, we're going to be using the Holiday Rhinestone Basic Jewels. That's up there. Okay. So for all of the cards, we're going to be using a standard A2 size card. This is the thick. It is 5.5 by 8.5. I've scored it and folded it at 4 1/4 inches. For the middle of the, you might have a few extra than the basics. I have a couple layers added. This is 5 by 3 3/4. This is 5 1/4 by 4, and this is the macaroon, I think. No, soft sea foam. Okay, and then I have my card base, and then I have a little bit of green baker's twine, basically. So for the avid one, I have one other set of layers, and then I have the little baker's twine bow. And let's look here. Alright, these are going to be trimmed down a little bit after we do it. Basically, it's like 2 7/8 by 4 1/4. And 2 3/4 by 4. Okay, but they will be trimmed down because after we stamp the background on it, we'll be trimming it down. Okay, so let's get started on the simple one. I think I'm going to open it up. It'd probably be easier. Okay, for the inks, we have soft seafoam and memento. And you just need a couple of blocks. Let's open the ink. And I'm going to bring in the, put my bone folders away. I don't think I need them. Ink this up. Make sure it gets a good inking. I'm going to stamp it up in this quadrant up here, closer to the top and closer to this side. So it's about 1 inch from the top, about 3/4 of an inch from this one side. You want to try and get it straight if you can. This is awesome. Okay. Now we're going to bring in the memento ink. We're going to bring in this stamp and the sentiment. Make sure it's inked up well. Alright, then we're going to stamp it. And part of it's going to be off of this green part that we just stamped. The stem will be hanging off. But we want majority of that dandelion to be on it. Perfect. Okay, then we're going to bring in our sentiment. Has some good solid parts in the sentiment and well wishes, so I'm just trying to make sure I get it well inked. Okay, and then that's going to get stamped down here in this corner. Perfect. And that is our card. That's a simple card. Hashtag simple stamping. But it's really quite effective, quite pretty. Okay. So the next card, instead of stamping directly onto the card, we're going to stamp on that layer. And again, that is 3 3/4 by 5. Okay, so we're gonna, let's put the cover on this part. I'm gonna do the same stamping that we did on the other one. And our green ink up our bokeh. Stamp it again about the same positioning. Okay. I'll bring in the other 2 stamps. This one I find easier just to do this way. Go ahead and stamp it. Perfect. My goodness gracious, my dog is shedding like crazy. I got hair everywhere. Go ahead and stamp this down in this corner. Awesome, came out perfect. Get the hair in my stamp pads. I'll have to clean that out later. Alright, now we're going to bring in our Tombow Mono or snail adhesive, whichever one you choose. And I'm going to glue this to the green layer. It's got about 1/8 of an inch border. Okay, I'm going to bring in some dimensionals. Put some dimensionals on the back. Add a little bit of height to my card. I must have some embossing powder stray. Okay. Oh, I almost forgot a step. Before I adhere this, I want to put on this ribbon. Let's bring in the silicone mat since I already took the backs off of that. Alright. And this is just 3 strands of a green burlap ribbon. You can use the regular ribbon and dye it if you wanted. This is just some I had. Alright, awesome. Where we need it. Adjust that bow just a little bit. I want it to be a little tighter. There we go, that's better. Trim up these ends. Add a glue dot under the bow to hold it in where we want it. And we're going to move it down just a little bit more. So I'm going to curl the card this way. Oops, it's stuck to glue. And pull it down where I want it. I see it's stuck on the dimensionals. I think I want it down even a little bit more. Okay. Take our glue dot. Make sure it stays put. Now we're going to adhere this with our dimensionals to the front of our card, and again there's going to be about 1/4 of an inch space around it. There we go. There's our second card. Okay, so now for the Avid card, we're going to do our stamping on this little white piece. Doesn't matter what size it is, because you can, we're going to trim it down. And excuse me just a moment. Okay, let's stamp this bokeh on the center of that. Okay, now we're going to bring in our trimmer. I usually just use my large guillotine, but we're going to trim this so that there's just like a 1/16 of an inch around the edge of white, so it looks like we have a layer. Oops, stay put. Sorry, should have done one in advance. Didn't think about it. One more. So it ends up being just a little bit larger than 3 1/4 inches, like a 1/16 of an inch more. Okay, now we're going to bring in this piece here. We're going to bring in a snail. I'm going to put a little bit of snail in the center of it. I'm doing a lot, just a little bit. We're going to take off a little bit of the tack because we're going to want to take it back off. So we're going to put this where we're going to want our sentiment to be, so it's about 1 inch from the top. Okay, now we're going to bring in our this piece here. And the Memento ink. Get up well. Stamp it like we have on the other ones. Now there is going to be a little bit of it that's not going to stamp well because this paper is thick and it's making a ledge, so part of it's not going to stamp right next to that paper. It's alright. Awesome. Now on this one we're going to stamp our sentiment up here. So let's go ahead and do that while we have the ink out. To make sure I had it right side up. Okay, perfect. Cover this ink. Alright, now we're going to take this layer off. We're going to adhere this to this line piece, and we're going to trim a little bit off so that it has like 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch border all the way around it. And the reason we didn't do it before is because we weren't quite sure exactly what size this one was going to be. It was easier to trim it after we stamped it than to try and get that stamp exactly centered on that little piece of paper. Unless you were to do it in your Stamparatus, that would work. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get 2 sides lined up, and then I'll trim the other 2 sides off. Bring in my trimmer again. And 3.5. It looks pretty good. Let's do 3.5. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Put that aside for a minute. Alright, now we're going to bring in our we're going to take this piece that has that little bit stamped off on it. We're going to emboss that with the Curls and Swirls embossing folder. And I'm going to put you on pause and I'll be right back. Okay, I've run that through the embossing folder, through the embossing and die cut machine. And I now have this. Okay, so this is going to get adhered to this piece of soft seafoam. You want to use plenty of adhesive because it's embossed, so there's not a lot of areas to touch. So you want to make sure you get, and sometimes it warps it a little bit. I'll center it up, It's got about an 1/8 of an inch border all the way around it. And sometimes it's a little bit longer because it shrinks it up. Depends on the paper. Okay. And this piece is going to get adhered to the front of our card base. We don't need to wrap the ribbon on this one. You can if you want to. Just with the sentiment in a different position, it didn't look right. It looked crowded. Okay. This piece is going to get popped up with dimensionals. Alright. Poke your fingernail in it. It does two things. It helps it to adhere to the card. It pops up the edge of that paper so you can actually peel it off. Okay, now you're going to line up the stem here with this stem here, and this little piece here a little bit with that one. I think that looks good. Put it down. Make sure it's straight up and down. Okay, then where'd my bow go? I had it a minute ago. Let me put you on pause and find my bowl. Probably stuck to my sweater or something. Alright, I found it. Now we're going to adhere the bow up here on this corner here. Okay, and then we're going to bring in our rhinestones. And I'm going to use these green ones. I'm going to put one right in the center. That's a larger one. Then there's a middle-sized one. Let's put that up here in this area. And take a small one. And put it over here. Okay. And I did forget to put them on the middle one, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to use the lighter ones for that. The same way. Middle size one. Over here. And a little one over in here. I think I actually dotted my eye with this one. Okay. So there's our 3 cards. There's the simple, hashtag simple stamping. There's the middle of the road version where it's simple stamping. We just added a couple extra layers and a few embellishments. And here's the avid. I added the embossing folder. If you want to step it up even a little bit more, on this one I actually used a copper embossing powder. Okay, well, thank you for joining me at Jamie's Craft Table. I hope you have a great rest of your day.